Okay, today we're going to be writing equations of piecewise graphs, and this is very similar to what we did last week. We're just going to take it a step further. So remember, when we're writing these, we want to write them in the equation y equals mx plus b. So where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So if we look at number 1, we do have a y-intercept. That y-intercept is at -3. And now we just need to count the slope. So to count the slope, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So for the slope, I went down 6. And when you go down, it's going to be negative. And I go right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I go to the right 9, which is positive. And we always want to reduce slope, so that reduces to -2/3. So now that we have the information, we can write the equation, which is y equals -2/3 x minus 3. Now this time we need to write the domain. Now remember, the domain is our x values, and we do it from left to right. But notice this time it said to put it in inequality form. So we're going to write most of these as compound inequalities. So when that happens, x is in the middle, and then our smallest numbers on the left and bigger number on the right. Well, let's see. This graph starts at -6, and it ends here at 3. Now, these are always going to be less than symbols in compound inequalities, but we need to find out now if they're less than or equal to or just less than. Well, because this one over here has an open circle, it's just going to be less than, because that means everything up to but not including. This over here is a closed-in circle, so it's going to be included, so it's going to be less than or equal to. So now my domain, we know all the x values lie between -6 and 3, which we can see on the graph. They're all between -6 and 3. Okay, let's try this again for the second one. So for the second one, we want to write the equation. We don't have the y-intercept just yet, but we can figure this out. We can find the slope. So for the slope, we're going to go up 1, 2. Well, this is confusing the way it's drawn. Okay, we're going to call this point over here -6, -7, and this one -2, -5. So we're going to have to go up 1, 2 spaces, and we're going to have to go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4. So our slope is 2/4, which would be 1/2. And now we're going to use our 1/2 to figure out more points. So if I go up 1 and over 2, now I can see that my y-intercept is -4. So my equation is going to be y equals 1/2 x minus 4. All right, now I can calculate the domain, or find the domain, and figure out what it's in between. Well, I want to find my left-hand value and my right-hand value. Okay, so when I write the domain, I'm going to say that it's all the numbers in between -6 and -2. It's always less than symbols, but because they're both closed-in circles, it's less than or equal to. Okay, let's try this on number 3. So for the equation, first we have to find the slope. Now what gets tricky is we don't have 2 points, but we can figure this out. Doesn't it go through this cross mark there? Yeah, so we can find the slope. When we do that, we're going to go down 1, so that's -1, and then right 3, so the slope is going to be -1/3. Oh, actually I went right 4. My bad. So it's going to be -1/4. Okay, so let's see if we can find the y-intercept now. Down 1, right 4, and looky there. Now we know the y-intercept is 5. So my equation is y equals -1/4 x plus 5. But now we need to do the domain. Well, the first two, the domain was in between 2 points. This time, it starts at a point and continues to the left. Well, if it gets to the left, the numbers are smaller. So it starts right here at -4, but it's everything this direction. So it's everything that's smaller. So the way we say that it's everything that's smaller, we say x is when it's smaller, it's going to be less than -4. Because it's a closed-in dot, we'll have less than or equal to -4. All right, let's try this again on number 4. Okay, number 4, first we're going to find our slope. So the slope is up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. So it's 3 over 1. Now we don't see the y-intercept, but let's see if we can figure it out. If we went up 3 more, we'd be at 13, and then we go over 1, we'd be at negative 1. So we'd have to go up 3 more, and then over 1, so we'd be at 16. So our y-intercept is at 16. Now if that was too much for you, you could always do point slope form and figure it out. So my equation is going to be y equals, my slope is 3 over 1, which would just be 3x, and then plus 16. Okay, now let's find the domain. It's going to be in between here and here. Oh, it's really small. Okay, so it's in between two numbers, so we're going to write it as a compound inequality. So the smaller number on the left, the bigger number on the right, x is in the middle. It's always less than symbols. Because this is a closed-in circle, it's less than or equal to. Because that's an open circle, it's just less than. Okay, so now we go on to these two, which we haven't done anything like it, but they're not hard. Okay, if you think about this line right here, all of these points are at negative 6. So this point right here would be negative 4, negative 6. And this point here is 0, negative 6. And this point here is 3, negative 6. Okay, so if we have noticed anything, all of the y's are always negative 6. So if we have an equation that y equals a number, it's a horizontal line. So to write the equation, this equation is just y equals negative 6. That's it. And now, whoops, didn't mean for it to jump. Now we can state the domain. So it's everything between negative 4 and positive 4. So we have negative 4. It's less than x, which is less than positive 4. And because they both have open circles, we'll leave it as less than. If they had been closed then, we'd change it to less than or equal to. All right, let's look at number 6. So the equation, it's a horizontal line. That's a horizontal line at 8, so our equation is just y equals 8. And the domain, okay, it's not in between two numbers this time. It starts at 3, and it's everything to the right, so it's everything that's bigger. Now, when it was everything that was smaller, we would say less than, but it's everything that's bigger, so we're going to say that x is everything greater than, well, let's see, it started at 3, so now we're reading off the x-axis, okay, but it's a closed dot, so it's going to be greater than or equal to. All right, so what is a piecewise function? Because a piecewise function is going to have more to it than just one equation. So a piecewise function is a function that has different rules for different parts of the domain. So what does that mean? That means for one section of the graph, here are the rules, and this is what the graph does. And then for another section, here are the rules, and that's what that does. And then for another section, there's different rules. So it's broken into chunks. So it's not the same from start to finish. This section follows one set of rules, this section follows another, and so forth and so on. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like graphs like this. So when we write the rule, that's just telling you write the equations. Okay. This is always what it looks like. So we write f of x. Remember, f of x really is the same thing as y. And then we're going to write this bracket. And then we're going to write the three equations in order. But here's the deal. We already wrote f of x, which is the same thing as y. So when we write the equations over here, we are not going to write the f of x again or the y again because we've already done it. Okay, and when we write it, we have to write in order from left to right. So we're going to write equation 1, equation 2, and then equation 3. They have to go in that order from left to right. So we're going to write the equation first. So let's write the equation. So the first one, it's going to be y equals, wherever it crosses, it's 7. So the y equals 7, and then we're going to do a comma. This one crosses at 5, so it's y equals 5, and then we're going to put a comma, and I'll tell you why in a second. And then this one is y equals 3, and then we're going to put a comma. After we write the equation, then we're going to write the domain in inequality form. Okay, so let's look at this one. This first one is in between -8 and -4. So our domain is -8 is less than x, which is less than -4. The first dot was closed, so it's less than or equal to. Let's do the next one. The next one is from -4 to 3. So I'm going to write -4 is less than x, which is less than 3. And this is closed, and that's open, so this is less than or equal to. Notice where one leaves off, the other one picks up. And last but not least, this section goes from 3 to 7. So my last section is going to be from 3 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 7. But that first dot is closed, so it's less than or equal to. So this is how we write a piecewise function. So it's going to have f of x first equals this giant bracket, and then you put the equations in order from left to right. If you don't have them in order from left to right, it's not going to be correct. Now, where I just wrote the 1, 2, and 3, that matches this 1, 2, and 3, but you don't write this, okay? You don't write that in your equation. I was just trying to help you get it all matched up. Okay, let's see if we can do this again for number 2. So this one is going to have 1, 2, 3 equations, and we're going to write them in that order from left to right. So we know we're going to have f of x, oops, grab the parentheses, sneak them in, equals, and then a big bracket. Equation 1 will go on the top line, 2 will go on the second line, and 3 will go on the bottom line. Okay, so now let's see if we can figure out the equations for these 3 graphs. Equation 2 is easy. That's just y equals 2, right? But equation 1 and 3, not hard, just going to require us to think a little bit. Okay, so on number 1, we can find the slope. Let's just use this point. Go down 1, right 3. So my slope is -1/3. Down 1, right 3. My y-intercept is -4. So my equation is y equals -1/3 x minus 4. So that's the equation for line 1. Let's try this for line 3. So my slope is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope on this one is 4 over 4, which is just 1. Now I got to find 1 over 1. So now I got to find my y-intercept. So I could go up and to the right, but that gets me further away. So I'm going to go down and to the left. Oh, look at that. It's -4 as well. So my y-intercept is -4. So my equation would be y equals 1x, or just x, minus 4. Okay, so now that we have the equations, let's put it in the correct form. So this over here is just my work. That's not my answer. That's my work, okay? This over here is my answer. So I have to write equation 1 first because it goes on the left. And here is equation 1. So I'm going to say y equals, nope, we don't do y equals. I apologize because we already have the y equals here, right? The f of x is the y equals. So we're just going to start with a -1/3 x minus 4. Then we're going to write a comma, and then we're going to put the domain. Well, it ends over here at -3, but it's everything to the left. And we go to the left, it's smaller. So it's everything smaller than -3. So it's going to be x is less than -3, but because it's got a closed-in dot, it's going to be less than or equal to. Okay, let's look at the next section. We know the next equation is y equals 2. This over here is our y equals, so we just write the 2, and then comma, and now we're going to write the domain. Well, that domain was from -3 to 2. So it's going to be -3 is less than x, which is less than 2. This is an open circle, so it's less than. That's an open circle, so it's also less than. Okay, now we're going to write the equation for 3. Well, here's that equation. X minus 4. I didn't write the y equals because I have it here with the f of x. Now I need to write my domain. So my domain is from 2 to 6. So it's going to be 2 is less than x, which is less than 6. And at the 2, I have a closed-in dot, so I'm making it less than or equal to. So remember, this part is my equation, And this part here is my domain.